Thank you all for joining this new episode. My name is Simon de Raad. I'm the Vice President of HyperSKU for Europe particularly. And we want to create more transparency on the supply chain. So what is happening from purchasing till delivery? One very important part is, of course, of receiving the money and paying the service providers that you are using. For this particular topic, we have an amazing guest. We have Dan on the show here from Payoneer. He's been in the payment industry for 4 years and has been based in London, UK. And he's here to kind of explain a little bit more about what Pioneer is doing, but also what other merchants are doing when it comes to paying their suppliers and their receiving the money from their customers. So please, very happy to have you here, Dan Marsland, on this show. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here, and it's always good to have these conversations and learn a bit about what other people are doing as well.
Cool. Now, first of all, to kick this off, what problem is Pioneer solving, and how are you contributing to that, solving that problem?
Good question. So what we do is we help SMEs to receive and send money around the world effectively, completely targeted on the e-commerce space. So for dropshippers that you're working with, we set them up 12 different currency accounts around the world in the core e-commerce marketplaces and effectively enable them to receive money for free into these local bank accounts and then move the money around the world as they see fit, with the leading solution to the dropship market globally. And yeah, we really love supporting this vertical and supporting e-commerce clients more generally as well.
Nice. And what is your part in this?
So I work as a partnerships manager, so speaking to people like yourself, as well as working with a number of different players in the space on maybe integrations and maybe having referral flows built into Payoneer. So really building the brand awareness in the European side and working on more technical projects that we're undertaking as well.
All right, cool. And what is your ideal, or what does Pioneer's ideal customer look like?
Good question. So our ideal customer is amazingly broad, to be honest with you, but most of the work we work in is within marketplaces and e-commerce stores. So the normal client we typically work with would look like a client who may be based in Europe, who's selling around the world. So their supplier may be based in China, in the Far East. They may be selling in US dollars to the US. They may be selling Canadian dollars. So we really look for clients who have a global exposure and really fit the bill when it comes to supporting all of these different currencies. Obviously, the bigger the client, the better, like anything. But we support clients from the small startups all the way up to multi-million pound a month turnover businesses who are working in the e-commerce space, which, to be honest, is quite regular. We see that sort of turnover as well.
Yeah, when you mentioned it, getting payments blocked is a very big topic for a lot of dropshippers. So in case someone gets blocked within Pioneer, how would that work? Do you block at all? Do they contact the compliance team? Or they get a message themselves? How does that work?
Good question. So on our side, blocking, unless there's a real fraudulent issue, blocking for dropshipping payments specifically doesn't happen. What we find with other providers is that they might see their payments blocked when it's uncovered that they're a dropshipping client. Typically, these automated payment providers would see that they'd scale up in their size of the business when they hit a certain size of business and the transactions were a certain size. Then they'd be investigated, they'd realize they're a dropshipper and typically block it. Obviously, on our side, the fact they're a dropshipper doesn't have any problems at all with our T's and C's, etc. So we would never block based on them being a dropshipper, unlike a lot of other players in the market.
And if you're, for a lot of the providers, you're a number, so you have to deal with a robot or a bot chat box, and you're not
Exactly.
sure who's responding and if they're going to respond to your question. So that personal touch, that communication, that's for us, that's a big differentiator, and I assume for you guys as well, to have someone available to answer your questions whenever you raise them.
Yeah, exactly. I think in this day and age of tech, there can sometimes be an overbalance towards tech, and that is ultimately losing that human touch. But
Yeah.
I think it's really important to keep that balance, of course.
Yeah, crucial. Just now, you were, before we talked about compliance, you mentioned the IPO. Congrats on the IPO. How did you guys celebrate this in the UK?
Thank you, thank you. Well, unfortunately, it's fallen at the wrong time, really. So there's not been so much we could do out and about. But when it happened, we had like goodie bags and online events and things like that. But not quite what you'd expect. And I was hoping we'd get flown out to New York for the IPO, but yeah, it's not going to happen, unfortunately.
No, market situation doesn't really allow that. Yeah, that's unfortunate. When it comes to you guys, Pioneers are serving a lot. We're integrated with marketplaces. In our case, we mostly work with Shopify, WooCommerce, BigCommerce. Is there any difference, and how would that work if they were want to work with Pioneer?
Good question. So the clients we work with receive from a whole heap of different services, different marketplaces, different payment gateways. The way it would work is effectively these payment gateways and marketplaces, they can pay you in the local currency that you're selling in. So say, for example, you're based in the UK, but you're selling in the US, you're selling in Australia. They are able to pay you in Australian dollars or US dollars directly into a US dollar or Australian dollar bank account, which a lot of people don't realize. We would open these bank accounts up for you. You would then receive for free into these accounts, and you would effectively bypass the conversion fee, which typically is really high with these payment gateways, and they'll just be paying out in the local currency. From there, you would obviously either pay that money out in the same currency to your suppliers, or you just convert it back. But the conversion fee that we would charge would at least be half of the conversion fee from these payment gateways, and typically a lot more than that, depending on how much of the turn of the business is turning over, etc. So yeah, really a smart way of helping save a few percentages on every sale, but over the course of a year, those few percentages do add up to a huge amount of money. And we find that through people actually just thinking about how they can streamline this process. I mean, in a year, you can save upwards of. I've had clients that have saved upwards of 50,000 just from a very small change, which doesn't cost them anything.
Yeah. Yeah, these percentages really add up in all kinds, because when you just look at bottom line purchase cost for product and then sales price, oh, this is my margin. But then people forget about the payment transaction cost, advertising, or freelancers that are helping you with running your customer service, or all these things will just, of course, shrink your margin. So 1% has a big impact overall.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of dropshippers are working off relatively tight margins as well. When you're thinking of the ad spend is astronomical for dropshippers. So these margins are ever so important. And if you're saving yourself 0.5 even of a percent, that adds up to a huge amount in a month, a year, and just enables you to scale your business effectively.
Yeah, exactly. When we had a conversation before, and also when I spoke and learned a little bit more about Pioneer, I learned there's a difference between acquiring companies and payment service providers like Pioneer. How does that? Because acquiring company, my understanding, but please correct me if I'm wrong, is that they more help with the B2C transactions, such as Klarna and Stripe. They collect the money from the consumers, and then people in the supply chain need to be paid. And these payments within the supply chain are more B2B payments that are then handled by Pioneer and similar companies. Is that correct? Or
Yep, spot on. So in the
yes.
ecosystem, you have the card acquirers, and then the payout methods or the PSPs, and they basically sit close together. There's not really any companies that do both around the world. They're very, very complex things in their own right. But yeah, basically the payment gateway or the acquirer, which might be a Stripe, an Adyen, for example, a Klarna, they would take the card payment and they would do everything there is to do in the back end with taking that money from that card, paying it into the bank account of the client. We effectively sit as that bank account, so you can pay directly from this acquirer into said bank account, and then we handle everything from there on out. So everything we do is B2B. The reason why it's all B2B is because it's a lot easier from the compliance process, etc. We just simply take the payment from these guys, they do the hard B2C, but etc. And the fraudulent activity there, which could potentially happen. Pay us here, and from here we help you on the payout side. So we specialize in helping you send money across the world. Obviously, a lot of e-commerce clients and a lot of dropshipping clients have this requirement, and this is really where we sit in the market. As a core focus, it's the multi-currency side. These guys, they're just taking the card payment. They're not, their focus isn't on the FX cross-border side of the business. So typically their margins are really high. And yeah, when somebody combines the two in a really clever way, then they can save astronomical amounts. And I think that's the beauty of fintech in general. Fintech, if you use it correctly and if you know where to look, you can really save a whole heap of money when you compare it to the banks and other providers that might accumulate all these services. I think you just have to be aware of the area and really focus in on how you can combine these different companies and these different services to make your business as streamlined as possible.
Yeah, so in the end, you will need an acquirer and you need a service provider like Payoneer. And then payments between Payoneer accounts are free of charge, right? So you only actually pay a fee once you start to convert into another currency, or when you take out money from your account, or you make a payment to a party outside. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So everything's free. So the account setup is completely free to receive money, free to send money pretty much out in the same currency. So you have a £1.50 charge or €1.50 charge for doing that. Free to send it to any Payoneer account holder. The only time we ever make money is when you convert that currency, and that reflects the cost saving more than anything. So we're not actually charging any fees. We're just helping the client save money, because typically with a bank or with another payment provider, their fees won't be as competitive as ours. And we can save you money there. So really it's a cost saving product. There's no fee whatsoever to actually use the product. So yeah, really interesting and a great way to increase the efficiency of your business for free effectively.
Oh, that sounds good. And because you have global customers, do you see any differences, like customers operating from Dubai or China or Europe or UK? Do you see any differences on their demands or needs or your services itself?
So I think everything is pretty similar around the world for dropshippers and e-commerce clients in general. Where we would differentiate them, I guess, is where we see hubs of clients. So you mentioned Dubai there. Dubai is a huge hub in the dropshipping world. And we really see different clients working in different verticals based on where they're based. So a lot of the Amazon guys are obviously based out of China, a lot of Walmart guys in the US, a lot of freelancers in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Airbnb hosts that use our services completely around the world in tourist destinations. But yeah, that is really interesting to see the different parts of the business in different areas and how it's relevant to different people and how they use effectively the same product, but in a very different way. We've got about 4 million customers around the world, 25 offices, so it's a completely global operation, and there aren't many companies that have such a broad exposure. And so it's super interesting to see exactly what different parts are doing and how they're working and how that differentiates across the world.
Yeah, this is what I particularly like about dropshippers, but also the e-commerce space. There's so many different service providers that you have to consider. It's really a whole ecosystem. And a lot of dropshippers, maybe they find out I'm not a good one in dropshipping, but I like the marketing part, or but I like the ads, or I like the building the store, or I want to do the sourcing, or I want to do the logistics. It is kind of like the audience are upcoming entrepreneurs trying to find their path. and Payoneer is there to support them, whatever kind of journey they're doing, whether it's payment or service or those kind of things. Do you see anything particular where your company is biggest in serving certain customer base?
So dropshipping is, well, in terms of where we're leading the market, dropshipping is a core market of ours, and we are the leading solution around the world. As I said, the reason for that being that a lot of other providers ban dropshippers eventually. So they will eventually come to us and they don't leave us when they're here. And yeah, when you look at holiday rentals, for example, we are the leader there. We support about a huge amount of Airbnb's payments, so the vast majority. And then you look at the freelancer market, we are the market leader there. So anywhere really where there's a marketplace or e-commerce clients are selling online, we are typically involved there, and we typically do lead that market. Where it's interesting is because we do it very silently. So if you're Amazon, for example, that payment is received by Amazon as the end client. It's not, you don't really see Payoneer in the process. Airbnb as well, you don't really see that effectively in the process, but we are firmly inbuilt there, which is a bit of a shame in a way, because people don't know how strong we are in the market and how big we are. But effectively, with the product, that's how you have to work it. You have to make it appear as though it's their product effectively. But on this side of the business, yeah, we've got a huge following, and a lot of people are aware of what we do in the dropship market and in the e-commerce market more generally. So yeah, I'd say in e-commerce, we are the leading payment provider who works as the bank.
Well, with 4 million users, it's hard to stay invisible, I would say.
Yeah.
And it's more B2B focused. So therefore, it's probably for consumers maybe less familiar with the name, but for operators, much more.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. I think in general, when there's a consumer product, the brand awareness is significantly more than a B2B product. You think of, I mean, the Klarnas of the world, who are targeting consumers to take credit. They are a huge brand in their own right.
Yeah.
But really, they have that exposure because they are firmly on websites, etc., and firmly in the mind of the consumer, which then does translate into B2B as well. But yeah, it's difficult to, unless you want to spend absolutely millions on marketing to get that exposure in the minds of the consumer. So it's really a niche product in a niche B2B category. But as I said, we're leading that market and we're super effective there.
Yeah, we see a lot of our customer base, they first start in 1 or 2 countries and then they go global. Well, you're with your services, you're able to open different currency accounts, which is great for them to scale. I also read there's some kind of virtual bank accounts that you guys offer. Can you share a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, so where we sit in the market is we commonly see sellers who may have a need to send, they may be selling in their own domestic market, but they may have a need to send money into a different currency to pay their international suppliers. So this is where we really come into contact with them. From there, we get to know that customer and we rebuild a relationship with them. Commonly, what we see is if it's an Amazon seller, if it's a dropshipper, once they've exhausted their domestic market, they need to look international. The opportunity is a huge and it's amazing on the international side. So we then say, hold on, we've got all of these 12 currency accounts for you in every leading market. And then we help to push them into these markets, to advise them, to make introductions to relevant partners in these markets, and really to help them grow. So our real objective is to take this domestic seller who may be sourcing internationally and then make them into a global brand and help them sell completely around the world, because the opportunity is there, right? But coming back to your second question, we effectively work with partner banks around the world, and this is how it's done infrastructurally, to open up local bank accounts and effectively resell them through our platform to our clients. So our clients with their own bank account with Bank of America in the US, Barclays in the UK, Citibank in Europe, so all leading banks, and they would have their own name on that account and they would just receive into it through the Payoneer platform, and then they'd manage their money, sending it around the world through our platform. So a really clever idea, really difficult to do in the relationship side.
Yeah.
But the whole part of the business and the whole reason why we're doing business is to help scale e-commerce brands globally and really push them and make them take advantage of what's out there, because it's amazing. There's not really any other business where you can expand so quickly and sell your products completely globally. So it's crazy interesting, but yeah, we're happy to be a part of that.
So no need to open an entity and that a bank account needs to be under that entity in that country. You just have one entity that opens multiple bank accounts globally.
Yes, exactly. If you're going to go direct to the bank, for example, you'd have to have an entity there, you'd have
Yeah.
to have a warehouse there, cost tens of thousands of pounds. We effectively bypass that for you, having already done that hard work for you, and then you can take advantage of this global infrastructure that we offer.
Interesting. You've been in the fintech for 4 years, I think. What are like recent trends now there, and what kind of, particularly for merchants, what will be the future like?
Yeah, so there's obviously a massive trend at the moment to going online, and yeah, more and more people seeing that e-commerce is taking over in a way. I think it'll be interesting to see exactly where that moves. There's an awful lot of businesses in the ecosystem that are supporting e-commerce, and really it's the biggest growth market that's out there, right? So whether it shrinks as a result of everything reopening, that's the big question in everyone's mind, and that will really impact how much people are actually investing into the space in new products, new developments to serve this market. But I imagine that it's going to stay relatively stable and it's going to keep growing year on year. So I don't think that's an issue. So yeah, they've got an awful lot of fintechs that focus on this space. And yeah, when you look at different services and different verticals that fintech companies more generally work in, I think e-commerce and online and the cloud are the three biggest things that fintechs take into consideration. Whether it be a SaaS platform taking something into the cloud and helping businesses manage everything in the cloud, whether it be e-commerce, whatever it is, typically any growth area out there is all to do with the internet in some sort of way. So I think it's a main core focus, and I think if you're within that space and within e-commerce more generally, the future is going to be great, and there's an awful lot you can do to kind of ride in that wave. So yeah, really fortunate to be a part of the space, and I imagine it's the exact same for you. Hopefully we all see a huge amount of growth into the future, and it'll be interesting one day, I guess, to see what actually stops the growth of e-commerce. If it can be oversaturated, if it just becomes saturated over time and it stops growing. But I think with the developing world having more access to internet, with their infrastructure improving for e-commerce, I think there's a whole lot of growth to go in the market, and it's really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, I saw the Shopify CEO have a presentation mentioning that in China, the online payments is almost 50% compared to offline, where in the US, it grew from, I think, from 15 to 20 or 25 due to Corona, where there's still a huge gap. I think China payments or China consumer behavior is a little bit ahead of the world when it comes to online transactions and behavior itself. So if you see that's still a gap, let's say it's 25 grew to 25%, that's still 25 to 50. That's double, which is insane. And of course, it's not only buying products, but more and more services, consults, online training, coaches. Those kind of things are also normally done with online transactions in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that push is going to go even further. If you look at like WeChat, for example, and the power that has in the market, it's going to be interesting to see who in the US and the West actually builds something that goes up against that. Probably WhatsApp in the not so distant future, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think the super apps and taking everything online and moving away from cash more specifically is going to be the trend. And yeah, and I think it really is quite a daunting experience for those business who can't adapt, and maybe those bricks and mortar stores and more traditional businesses. It's going to be really difficult to keep up in this day and age where we're going even further towards tech, and maybe when the uptake, as you mentioned, has been relatively small in the US and the West, they've been able to get by without much to worry about. But when these trends really start to gain momentum and really start to evolve, I think for businesses that aren't in that process, they really need to they either join in and really become more technologically knowledgeable, or they're going to run the risk of kind of falling behind and the business going under effectively. So it's going to be a really interesting transition.
For you, also quite a cool transition, because as a partnership manager, you have a lot of new partners to explore that didn't exist before.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess the same applies on your side as well. The kind of market is continuously growing, and yeah, it's super exciting to see new business come into the space, new relationships to be built, and different people doing different things and seeing different results as well. So I think it's key to be part of a fast moving market.
Yeah.
And I imagine you shared the exact same thing, right?
Yeah, and for sure. When it comes to different platforms, we just integrated with BigCommerce. Besides Shopify, WooCommerce, there's still many of other similar platforms out there to integrate with. Because one seller is now not typically sticking to his lane; it's going everywhere on multiple channels. So to be able to service them, that's an important part. We see social is a very big driver of traffic, and these influencers want to create their own brands. That's an important part for us as well, to facilitate them. They have an idea, but somebody needs to actually find that product and brand it and then ship it out. And then we have Chinese manufacturers that want to go global. They have qualified products, but they don't know how to reach the audience. So there's so many things that we can still grow towards. I do think that the supplier will be the biggest push in the next 5 years. But at this point, it's the social influencers that are driving most of the traffic and growth, I would say.
That sounds crazy interesting. That's another space that is just mind blowing. Effectively, these guys have just bypassed the whole system, right? With the media and everything all the hoops they typically have to jump through, and they can be famous and millionaires almost overnight and have that huge exposure to such a big market.
Yeah,
it's interesting to hear about how you help them exploit that exposure and help them really build products and brands and push out and take advantage of the what they have effectively.
I think you mentioned it before, like for you on Amazon, a lot of your transactions are with Chinese, because China is delivering, I think 50% or more of the sales is from Chinese sellers on Amazon. And there's a huge Chinese push because the ecosystem there is already quite developed. So we also think that these suppliers are going to get much more powerful, where before they had to settle with an order. Now they're kind of creating their own order by saying, hey, promote this product. Here's the video, here's the pictures, go do your work, and then cut out the middleman and just scale from that kind of angle. So that's very interesting to see. That's happening in China already. It's not that well yet serviced globally, but for us, we want to facilitate that, to be really like in between, to make it happen, be in the bridge from supplier till delivery, shorten the transit time, to be able to have the communication more transparent, have a whole system in place. So that's kind of the journey where we think our biggest niche will be going forward. Yeah.
And I mean, you've seen the opportunity, obviously. You need to kind of execute and take advantage of it. I think, like you mentioned, if there's a lack of people doing it in space, then that brings a huge opportunity. So there, it's just building relationships and getting people on board, because I think it's a crazy addressable market there, right? Yeah,
I think now we're in 2021. There's a big impact with new regulations for VAT. I think it's been in the UK and in Europe. That's now really top of mind for us to be able to help overcome that. I don't know, have you seen any hurdles with these kind of new regulations? Because the UK had one implemented 1st of January, didn't really affect it, but in Europe for sure, 1st of July, there's been a big implementation with new VAT rules. Did you notice anything?
Yeah, definitely. So we've actually seen quite a large uptake of clients as a result of that. So as part of the regulation, if you're external to Europe, then a lot of the tax authorities will ask you to set up a European bank account, which you can make payments to the authorities with. So we take care of that for the sellers. We obviously set them up the account within a day for free, and then they can make payment to the tax authorities completely free of charge as well. So we've seen a good uptake of business, and it's still something that would be good to spread the word around, and I guess listeners of this to be exposed to how we help there, because it's a massive issue, right? If you're a US or Dubai seller and you've been asked to create a bank account in Europe, how on earth do you do that, right? And some people might not be aware. Some people might have stopped selling until they solved that issue.
Yeah.
So it's really important to make people aware of how we help there, how we can open that bank account within 1 day for free and allow you to pay your VAT obligations and actually continue transacting in Europe as well.
Yeah, that will be huge. I hope this video helps to show that the option is there, because I see many people that put their business on hold because simply they don't know. They don't know about the risk, how big is the risk, or what will happen. There's a lot of uncertainty. And of course, entities will, especially people selling into Europe that are based outside of Europe, is like, I'm not sure how to handle this. I need to find someone who can help me with the taxes. I need to open entities, bank accounts. This is too much. I'm sticking to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think currently it's whenever any change is made, I think it's the first reaction people have is to panic and just to stop. They can't comprehend it. Maybe they think that in a few months it will become a little bit clearer, which it typically does as word gets around and people are educated and people do see ways forward. It reminds me of Brexit. Obviously, as a payments institution, we've seen effectively what's happening on people's sales and where they're selling to, and because of Brexit, the sales from UK sellers to the EU dropped dramatically. But I think it's because people just don't understand what's happening, and they don't understand what the future might entail and the rules and regulations, and it takes a bit of time for people to understand it, people to be made aware, but then the revenues and the payments turn back to normal. So
it's back to normal now for you guys?
So it's picking up. Definitely there was a drop off, but definitely it's picking up again as people are made aware of the rules and regulations and things like that.
Nice. We're now in August. The peak season is coming. Do you have any suggestions as a payment provider on how people can prepare for the peak season?
So I think make sure you're stocked. Make sure you're stocked in peak season, and make sure that you're prepared on the marketing spend as well to enter that peak season. What we do is we help clients on the working capital side, so we can offer capital to e-commerce clients to then invest into their business and then obviously finance that growth and that preparedness. But apart from that, I'd say identify some good products and work your hardest to make people aware of them, and then really build some funnels into the peak season and take advantage of the opportunity, because obviously it's huge. It's the time of the year to knuckle down and really concentrate and focus, because obviously there's a huge amount of money on the table.
Yeah, it's nice that you guys facilitating that. I didn't know that you guys sort kind of loans. That really helps. That's the big bottleneck for a lot of people to scale.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. And we've been working with Payoneer very closely ever since we started the company 2.5 years ago. So we're very grateful for that. Is there anything for Payoneer users what you would like to share about how we as HyperSKU can be useful for them?
Yeah, so maybe you'd be best positioned on that in order to make our sellers aware of what you can do. But I think you're the leading platform for sourcing, and you do an amazing job. But maybe you should take that on and really advise our customers as to why they should be using your service and not anyone else's.
We have a Payoneer account, so therefore we can receive for free as well because it's in the same ecosystem. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense for people to use that. The biggest advantage I would say is, you only pay us. You don't pay multiple merchants. You just have us, and we deal with all the merchants in local currencies. Therefore, it becomes for you just much less of exchange rates, things like that will have a big impact from US dollar to RMB, for example. And it just stays in US dollar when you pay us. So that will definitely help you to grow your business and reduce costs. In the end, that's what it's always about. And we have presence over the world, also international teams speaking multiple languages, where we mentioned in the beginning, communication is key. And having someone who can speak Spanish, Russian, Hebrew, Arabic, Dutch, German, that is already a big differentiator to be able to actually help you on building your brand, finding a supplier, and preparing you for what's happening, and also be more transparent about it. It's not a black box. When there's a problem in supply chain, we will share, and it's not going to be a a sales pitch, like, yeah, this and this went wrong. We just tell you what it is. And because we see ourselves as an extension, and the same with payments. If that can reduce your cost, we need to be integrated so that it can be as efficient as possible. Yeah.
Perfect.
For yeah, I would. Yeah, do you have maybe some kind of promotion or something that you have for our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, so when they set up a Payoneer account, they'll be able to take advantage of a $50 reward that we'll set up for them. That will be connected to a link that we'll be happy to share after this. And yeah, that's a reward. Once you load the account, you'll be given $50. So it's pretty generous. And yeah, it could buy you a few beers. So take advantage of it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And and then there's a deadline to this to sign up, or is it just ongoing?
So it's ongoing, but we would advise to get it in before the peak season, so we can help you get set up and get you connected and get you saving on the foreign exchange. Before the start of September, we'd also be offering a 0% FX fee, which sellers will be able to take advantage of. Basically, be able to transact for free on the platform until the start of September, and then moving forward, then we'd start charging. We can negotiate a really sensible rate based on their volume as to what we do there.
Nice. If somebody wants to connect with Payoneer or they're not using Payoneer yet, where should they go to?
Best to email me, so I'll be able to take care of the VIP handling and the onboarding process of that. But it's danielmar@payoneer.com. But I'm sure you'll share my contact details as well with everyone involved in this.
Yeah, if you're fine with that, yeah, we will for sure. Yeah. Cool. I really appreciate your time. Unfortunately, we cannot have the beer together now. I hope we can meet each other in the UK someday or anywhere in Europe, because I think you'll be traveling once borders opening up again. That will be nice. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I really want to thank Dan and Payoneer for their support and contribution to this episode. Hopefully, it clarified you about your options doing cross-border payments, and also to save your cost. In the end, that's what every entrepreneur wants to realize. Any question, please leave a comment below in our video, in our chat. Reach out to Dan, feel free, or reach out to me. And I hope to see you on the next one. Thank you, Dan.
Perfect, guys. Thanks a lot for having me, Simon.